At the outset, I'd like to express my deep gratitude to the Honorable Minister Ezekiel Joseph for hosting this 18th ministerial meeting on the sustainable use of living marine resources. I'm greatly honored to be here and see representatives of like-minded countries, many of whom I have met on various occasions, including last year's ministerial meeting held in St. Kitts. Before beginning my statement, on behalf of the government and people of Japan, I wish to extend my sincere sympathy and condolences to the people who have been affected by Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria. We are quite aware of the plight of those affected people, so now Japan firmly stands with affected countries for early recovery in the aftermath of these destructive storms. Given the devastation caused by Irma in Antigua and Barbuda, especially on Barbuda Island, and that caused by Maria in the Commonwealth of Dominica, the government of Japan decided to provide emergency supplies to both countries through the Japan International Cooperation Agency in response to a request from the respective governments. Our emergency supplies to Antigua and Barbuda have already arrived in Antigua, and our supplies to Dominica is now on the way. Now, the relationship between Japan and the Eastern Caribbean states is much deeper and stronger than before. And we have been making every effort to further strengthen our cooperation in many fields. In this context, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has visited Caribbean countries in the last 3 consecutive years, thus enhancing dialogue with the leaders of your countries. We are determined to strengthen the ties with member states in this region even further in many fields, including fishery and disaster risk reduction, as well as cooperation in the international arena. In the area of fisheries, our keyword is sustainable use. The whaling issue is important as it is closely related to the general principle of sustainable use of living marine resources. Whales are part of the major marine ecosystem, and therefore giving special status only to whales and categorically protecting them cannot be supported by science. On the contrary, such protection could be even harmful to the balance of the marine ecosystem, which would be achieved through the use of living marine resources in a sustainable manner. Furthermore, such an idea of total protection is often based on emotion and could be expanded to other living marine resources, such as tuna. Thus, Japan maintains its basic policy of conducting a whale research program based upon international law and scientific evidence in order to gather scientific data, which is essential for the sustainable management of whale resources. Island nations, like Caribbean countries and Japan, are highly dependent on living marine resources for food and have been cooperating with each other for a long time in pursuit of achieving sustainable use of living marine resources, including cetaceans. We are in the same position in this area, and we have strengthened our cooperation at international fora such as IWC and CITES. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to all member states for your continued support. In this ministerial meeting, we'd like to share our views and policies on the sustainable use of living aquatic resources with you, and I look forward to having active discussions with you and further enhancing our coordination in wider areas. Next year, from September 3rd, the 67th IWC will be held in Brazil. Unfortunately, there are fundamental differences in views between those who consider whales as a resource for sustainable use and those who consider that all whales should be fully protected. At the previous Commission meeting in October 2016, although the proposal to establish a Southern Atlantic Ocean whale sanctuary was rejected, the resolution on the review process of scientific whale research was passed, and the resolution on food security was rejected by the majority held by anti-whaling countries at that time. The international situation around whaling remains difficult. Therefore, we have to make every effort to gain support from the international society and defend our position that sustainable use of living aquatic resources, including cetacean, should be respected. Despite the difficult situation, it is very encouraging that not only Caribbean countries, but also states in other areas, such as Asia Pacific, Africa, and Europe, stand up to add their voice to our position to support sustainable use of living aquatic resources. We believe that at the next Commission meeting, pro-sustainable use countries will be united and achieve good results. Finally, on behalf of the government of Japan, I'd like to reiterate our deepest gratitude and appreciation for your long-lasting support, and I do look forward to further strengthening cooperation with you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It is a period in our history as a Caribbean people that any discussion taking place over the next 5 years has to begin and take into consideration issues touching on concerning climate change. And I'm certain that when this meeting was conceived prior to the passage of hurricanes Jose, Irma, Maria, that the context was different. And I want to posit that during the course of the discussions today, even though we do not materially amend the items on the agenda, that great emphasis has to be placed on issues of mitigation, support as it pertains to recovery, and it will be in our interest to have a working group coming out of this meeting to ensure that we facilitate many of the decisions that we are going to make. The OECS CARICOM, our islands are in a period of transition, transitioning from agriculture-based economies to service-based economies. For the Windward Islands in particular, transitioning from a banana-based agriculture economy to the offshore financial services sector, which was attempted, and we say in St. Vincent and the Grenadines did not last as long as Miss Janie's fire. Janie fire, the proverbial Janie fire, is a fire that came up, didn't last very long and went out. The tourism sector is the engine of growth because manufacturing is not advanced because of the diseconomies of scales of production and the high cost of electricity. I want to posit that we have winged fisheries for many years. And there is a need in every discussion about sustainable development in fisheries for a broader context, taking into consideration a critical need for us to explore how we are going to develop the blue economy of the OECS and the blue economy of CARICOM. And this is against the backdrop that our fishermen and fisher folk and our fishing communities are not fully exposed to factors of production, land, labor, and capital, which can drive development in any serious way. We have to have a frank discussion. If you go to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and you go to the village of Barrowley, if you come right here in St. Lucia, if you go to Grenville in Grenada, what you're going to find are fishermen and fisherwomen, fisherfolk, grappling with day-to-day vagaries. And even though they are supported by government and by the private sector, there is no clear developmental path for their advancement, whereby we can say in the next 20 years, we expect to see an additional $20 million in the OECS contributed to the GDP from fisheries. That discussion has to take place. And it is very important for us, taking into consideration all that has taken place over the last 3 weeks in Dominica, Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands, St. Martin, that as we seek to rebuild and rebuild better. I want to thank the government of St. Lucia for the hospitality extended to my delegation and to the entire meeting and persons attended, and also to thank the government and people of Japan for the years of camaraderie. Many of our islands have benefited significantly. However, there is a need for greater, renewed, and strategic partnership if we are to work in the interests of the citizens of the region. I look forward to a long day and a very fruitful one. Thank you very much.
I would say that when I go to St. Vincent or to Antigua or to St. Kitts, whenever the respective ministers will be making a few welcome remarks, they will say that their country is the best in the OECS. And their country is the gem of the OECS. But I'm sure all of us here would agree that that statement can be said to St. Lucia. And the fact is that St. Lucia is the gem of the OECS. So I want to welcome you all and to ask the organizers to make sure that some time is spent for you all to appreciate and enjoy what we have to offer in St. Lucia. I recall when we were discussing that matter, I asked the organizer to try and coincide this meeting to end on a Friday. Because if you're willing to enjoy St. Lucia, you should be here on a Friday night. That's when St. Lucia comes to life. But Darwin had other plans for y'all. And that's why Darwin have organized it to end on a Wednesday. But you'll have to blame Darwin, don't blame me. Mr. Chairman, for the past few weeks, we have seen and experienced the impact of climate change. We have seen and experienced the impact of global warming. Of course, we'll all here are fully aware of the impact that it has created, the negative impact that's created on some of our sister islands, Antigua, Barbuda, the British Virgin Islands, and most recently, Dominica. And last night I was asked a question, what happened to St. Lucia? I want to say that whilst we were not directly affected, but we did suffer some negative impact in our banana industry. The situation is one where about 8% of the industry is affected. And in some areas, up to about 45%, especially the Roseau Valley, up to about 45% of the banana farmers there did suffer significant impact of Maria. And in so doing, I want to wish each and everyone who have suffered all the best on behalf of the other respective ministers of the OECS, and to commit ourselves, like was said by the Minister from St. Vincent, to commit ourselves in assisting them in recovering, and recovering in a sustainable way, because the reality is that climate change is here to stay. I want to recognize you, Mr. Ambassador, and your government for your initiative in assisting those affected countries, and I'm sure your support will go a long way in helping them to recover as speedily as possible. Because the reality is that we need to give the support to our sister OECS countries. Mr. Chairman, ministers of fisheries from the OECS and Suriname are here once again to discuss sustainable development in our marine environment. This time, we're looking at the whole aspect of whaling. Let me set the record straight. We are all here, and I'm sure I'm correct in saying that we believe in the sustainable use of our resources. We believe in conservation. We are all about using our resources appropriately. Because, Mr. Chairman, the fisheries industry is very critical to our social economic development. We all know, and that's the reality, that's a fact, that our ocean space is much more than our land space. And like was said by my colleague minister from St. Vincent, the reality is, are we really benefiting from our ocean space? Are we? The reality is, and I can speak for St. Lucia, and I'm sure I can speak for St. Vincent and Grenada, the reality is that we are seeing more returns from our land-based farmers than from our fishermen or fisher folks. And we all know some of the reasons, some of the challenges that our fisher folks are faced with. One, the high cost of production. Two, the traditional way in which we are still involved in the fisheries subsector in the OECS. We are seeing that we have more land-protected areas than marine-protected areas. And of course, we are seeing that there's more technology for land-based agriculture than fisheries-based agriculture. I say all these things for us to now change the way we advance our policies, and to echo my minister from St. Vincent, to have a plan as to how we are going to develop our fisheries. Because if we agree that we have more blue space, and I want to use the phrase, more blue space, why is it that we are realizing less returns from our blue space? We are hearing that there's a reduction in stock. And in the case of whales, there's a reduction in the population of whales. The question is, Mr. Chairman, is the reduction in the population of whales, or in the reduction in the population of our stock, is as a result of our fishing practices in the OECS? Is it? Or is it rather as a result of other factors affecting the population of the respective marine life? And I want to say, I'm sure all of us here would agree that there are other factors affecting marine life. For example, climate change. We just spoke about the whole aspect of climate change. Pollution, the result of pollution in our marine life, is a factor affecting growth in our marine environment. The impact of boats and vessels trafficking through our blue space is affecting the life of our marine environment. Technology. When I speak of technology, I'm sure those of us here would agree that now there's a lot of technology taking place in the marine environment. For example, the establishment of wind farms, drilling for oil. Are these things not affecting the marine life? And the question is, have we undertaken the scientific approach to look at the impact of those activities on our marine resources? And Mr. Chairman, I must say that when you look at all these negativities, the countries that are against whaling, those countries that are speaking about we should discontinue to harvest our marine resources, most of them are the ones who are creating this negative impact as to those I have spoken about. One, climate change, because we all would agree, is the more industrial countries are the ones who have affected our environment. The question of pollution, the question of technology, are the most advanced countries are the ones who are engaged in these activities. So the question is, what do we do? What do we do moving forward? Let me, as the Minister of Fisheries, and like was said by the Chairman, as one who have been involved in the agricultural sector, express my appreciation to you, Mr. Ambassador, and your government for the support that you have given to our fisheries in the region, and specifically St. Lucia. I can say here without any contradiction that your support has enabled us to grow and has enabled our fisher folks to benefit and to make a livelihood from the marine environment. But of course, we have to change. We have to look at ways and means we can encourage more young persons to get involved in fishing. And by doing this, we need to look at new technology. We need to look at ways and means where our fisher folks can go out there and be able to harvest and reduce the cost of production. And that calls for technology. We need to train our staff. And I can speak for the Ministry of Agriculture. When you look at the Fisheries Department, a number of our trained staff and experienced staff are going on retirement. And I'm sure that's the situation throughout the region. And as Minister responsible for fisheries, I have the responsibility to go on to meet with my cabinet ministers and see how we can get more persons trained in fisheries. So we need to look at ways and means of training our staff members so they can be equipped to go out there and interact with our fisher folks. Mr. Ambassador, we need to continue to collaborate. We need to collaborate on new technology. We need to collaborate on ways and means we can reduce the cost of production. We need to collaborate on how we can move from primary production into value added. To me, that's a focus we need to start moving because we have the infrastructure. And with the infrastructure, if we're not realizing type of returns from our practices, the infrastructure is of no use to us. I want to say that as the Minister responsible for fisheries, in our collaboration moving forward, we also have to look at the respective entities that are here with us and have the same objective in developing our fisheries subsector. And I refer to CRFM, I refer to OECS, how we can bring on board these entities and for us not to be seen that we are duplicating efforts because we have limited resources. We have limited human financial resources. And I think we need to come and collaborate and sing from one hymn sheet as to what we are doing. And I make this plea because I can say there are other entities where I'm seeing that we are duplicating efforts. And I want to say here today, during our deliberation, we should spend some time because we have CRFM here represented and we have OECS here represented. How we can collaborate. Let's hear from them what are the programs and how we can come together with one common objective, the development of our fisheries sector. I want to say that as a government, we are committed in giving support to your government, Mr. Ambassador, and will continue to give support to the development of the fisheries subsector in the region, because we all know of the impact a vibrant fisheries subsector can have on our social economic development. And I want to express my appreciation to you for funding this activity in St. Lucia, sorry. I want to thank you to Darwin for choosing St. Lucia for the 18th.
St. Vincent next time.
Is that a negotiation? For choosing St. Lucia. And I want to express, as Minister, to my PS and all the staff members from the Ministry of Agriculture who worked tirelessly to make this thing a reality, to make this meeting a reality, because come last night, they were all here working late hours. I want to say thank you very much for your effort and your commitment. And I want to say I'm looking forward, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Chairman, to make this meeting a meeting of a difference. A meeting where we all would agree on policies, and when we leave here, we all speak to these policies in one voice. I want to say thank you very much for choosing St. Lucia, and I wish you all the best.